Tsavo Reserve, late afternoon. A pale haze hangs over the dry grasslands, the air heavy and still. Along the edge of a dusty service road, a shape lies half hidden in the yellow sand. The curve of a flank, the sweep of a tail unmoving. At first glance, it could be the remains of an old carcass, long abandoned. But as the ranger's truck slows to a stop, he sees the rise and fall of shallow breath, the faint twitch of an ear flicking at the flies. The lioness is alive, but only barely. He steps down onto the road, his boots sending up small puffs of dust. She does not lift her head. The sun has baked the ground into a hard crust, and her body seems to have sunk into it, as though she has been lying there for hours. Her ribs press sharply against her skin with each labored breath. A faint rattle escapes her throat when she exhales. If she moves suddenly, the effort might kill her. If she doesn't move at all, the heat will finish what weakness has started. The ranger moves closer, each step measured, slow, angled so she can see him if she has the strength to turn her head. She doesn't. He notes the dried mud along her legs, the crusted blood near her shoulder. Not fresh, but not old either. Her eyes are half closed, lashes heavy with dust. When a fly lands on her muzzle, she flicks it away with a breath so faint it barely stirs the air. Flies gather thick at the edges of her mouth and the wound. The ranger waves them off gently, crouching at a careful distance. The stillness around them is deep, no rustle of grass, no bird calls, as if the land itself is holding its breath. In the dry season, every predator's life hangs by thin threads of water and strength. For her, both are nearly gone. If she is left here, she will not survive the next hour. He reaches for the radio clipped to his vest, his voice low and steady. The call for a vet is quick, clear, without panic. Help will come, but not fast. Out here, distance stretches everything. While he waits, he studies the sand around her. No signs of pride, no cub tracks, no drag marks. She is alone, and that makes her weaker still. A solitary lioness in this state has no one to guard her if scavengers come. She shifts once, barely, her hind leg stretching out, claws grazing the ground before curling back. The ranger sees the tremor in the movement, how it drains what little she had gathered. "It's okay, girl," he murmurs, his voice carrying in the dry air. His tone is less to calm her. She's too far gone for fear, and more to mark his presence as steady and safe. A trail of ants cuts across the road behind him, their ordered movement sharp against the stillness. The sun edges lower, and with it the air cools slightly, but the heat in the sand still radiates against her. The ranger scans the horizon for the dust plume of the vet's vehicle. Nothing yet. He counts her breaths, slow and uneven, and notes each pause. Too long, too risky. If her breathing slows any further, she may not be able to start again. Flies return to her wound, persistent. He takes a folded cloth from his pocket and, moving closer, brushes them away. She makes no sound, no sign of resistance. The cloth comes away speckled with dried blood and dust. He stays kneeling beside her now, one hand resting lightly near her paw, not touching, just close enough to sense any shift in her weight. If she tries to rise too soon, she could collapse hard and worsen whatever injury she carries. When the distant hum of an engine finally reaches his ears, it is faint, swallowed by the heat, but it is enough to make him glance toward the horizon, then back to her. She has not moved. Her breaths still rise and fall, but more slowly now, each one a quiet fight against the pull of the earth beneath her. If the vet arrives in time, she might live. If they are minutes too late, the dust will take her. He waits, steady in the fading light, the space between each breath feeling heavier with the weight of what could be lost. The hum of the approaching vehicle grows louder, bouncing across the dry flats, but the ranger keeps his focus on the lioness. She has not shifted since he first saw her. The sand around her is warm enough to sting his knees when he lowers himself beside her. Up close, the heat from her body feels uneven, her shoulder cool beneath his palm, her ribs hotter, the fever building beneath the strain of her breathing. Her flank rises and falls in shallow arcs. With each breath, a faint whistle escapes her nostrils, the sound catching as if she is pulling air through grit. The ranger places his hand gently against her side, firm enough for her to feel, soft enough not to startle. There is no flinch, no twitch of muscle. It is as if the weight of his hand means nothing to her, as though her body no longer has the strength to push anything away. The air between them feels heavy. No wind moves across the road, and even the flies seem slower now, circling in lazy arcs before settling again. He watches her eyes, the lids half drawn, the gold dulled to amber. They blink only when the grit stings, each slow closure a small surrender. In that stillness, the risks sharpen in his mind. If she stands too soon, her legs will give. If she stays down much longer, her lungs will falter. Either way, the hours ahead will decide whether she lives. The vet's truck appears at last, a wavering shape on the heat-rippled road. Still, the ranger doesn't move his hand. His touch serves one purpose now: to remind her she is not alone, to give the vet a moment to arrive before her fight drains completely. "Stay with me," he says under his breath, more habit than request. She breathes out in a slow, rattling sigh, and for a moment her tail flicks weakly against the dust. The vet kneels opposite him, scanning her with quick, practiced eyes. The stethoscope touches her chest, the cool metal drawing no reaction. A faint nod passes between the two men. She's holding on, but the margin is thin. Supplies are pulled from the bag: saline, tubing, a needle sharp and glinting in the light. The ranger keeps his hand on her side as the vet slides the needle in, the skin folding easily under the point. Clear fluid begins to drip down the line into her vein, the slow rhythm of each drop a small counter to the heat and dehydration. Minutes pass. The line feeds life back into her with quiet patience. Her breathing deepens slightly, each rise of her flank a fraction fuller than before. The ranger shifts only to adjust the line when it threatens to kink. Sand clings to the sweat on his forearms, and the smell of dust and animal hangs close. Somewhere beyond, a lone bird calls, sharp, then gone, and the silence folds back over them. He feels a faint movement under his palm, the slow roll of muscle as her lungs work a little harder. Her eyes open wider now, the pupils narrowing against the glare. She still does not move her head, but there's a subtle shift, an awareness that wasn't there before. If she can keep this momentum, she might rise in the next hour. If she doesn't, they will have to carry her before the light fades. The vet adjusts the flow and gestures toward the stretcher in the back of his truck. It will be ready when they need it. For now, they give her this chance to respond on her own. The ranger stays where he is, his hand still a steady weight, the heat pressing down on both of them. Each breath she takes now feels like a narrow thread pulled taut against the edge of failure, the kind that can snap without warning. When a faint tremor runs through her hind leg, he leans slightly forward, waiting to see if it will build into movement. It doesn't. Her breathing steadies but does not strengthen further. The ranger glances at the vet. Both know the next choice will come soon: lift her now, or risk the weight. The silence between them holds that decision in the air, heavier than the heat. The decision comes without words. The vet closes the clamp on the line, and the ranger shifts to the lioness's shoulders. Together, they slide the stretcher beside her, easing its canvas edge under her flank. Her body is lighter than expected, the muscle lost to days of hunger and heat. Even so, each lift is careful, controlled. If she twists or struggles now, she could open a deeper wound or send herself into shock. But she stays limp, her head lolling against the ranger's arm as they raise her clear of the sand. The walk to the acacia is slow. The stretcher sags slightly in the middle under her weight, swaying with each step. Dust rises around their boots, hanging briefly in the still air before falling back in muted clouds. The only sound is the faint tap of the IV line against the stretcher frame, keeping time with their movement. The acacia stands apart from the other trees, its wide crown breaking the sun into cool, dappled shadows. They lower her onto the sand beneath it, the shade wrapping over her like a thin, welcome blanket. The ranger kneels again, checking her breathing. It's still shallow, but steadier than it had been on the road. Her ribs lift with slow effort, the skin over them tight and dry. The vet reattaches the line, the bag of fluid now hanging from a branch above, tilted so gravity can do its work. Drops run down the clear tubing into her vein, each one disappearing into her as if swallowed whole. A breeze stirs then, faint but enough to shift the dust along the ground. It moves across her fur, lifting the lighter hairs along her back. She flicks her ear once, a small, almost imperceptible sign of life, and exhales in a sound less strained than before. The ranger notes the change, his eyes following the subtle rise and fall of her chest. If she can rest here, protected from the sun, the fluids might buy her enough time for strength to return. Around them, the reserve holds its quiet. Far in the distance, a herd of impala shifts across the plain, their movement a blur at the edge of sight. The shade feels cooler now, the air less oppressive. The vet crouches to check the wound on her shoulder, cleaning it with slow, deliberate strokes. Flies try to return, but the breeze keeps most of them away. She doesn't resist the treatment, either too tired to care or trusting the calm rhythm of their hands. The ranger shifts the stretcher slightly to angle her head toward the breeze. She blinks slowly, the dust clearing a little from her eyes. Her gaze isn't fixed on anything, but it moves faintly, tracking some shape or shadow beyond them. He leans back on his heels, watching her closely. Every moment here in the shade is a moment gained, a slow retreat from the edge she had been standing on hours ago. They speak little. The vet checks the drip, counts her breaths, notes the faint strengthening in her pulse. The ranger keeps watch for any sign of distress, a shiver, a twitch, a sudden gasp. None come. She stays still, her body surrendering to the quiet, letting the fluids and shade work where sheer will no longer could. When the breeze returns, stronger this time, it carries the faint scent of dry grass and distant rain. The ranger glances at the sky, a thin bank of clouds forming far to the west. It's not enough to break the season, but enough to soften the air. The lioness breathes in, her flank rising just a little higher than before, and for the first time all day, the line between survival and loss seems to shift, however slightly, in her favor. By morning, the air under the acacia holds a faint chill, the kind that comes just before the sun clears the horizon. The ranger is already kneeling beside the lioness, his hand resting near her shoulder. Overnight, the fluids have done their slow work, and the shallow whistle in her breathing has eased. Her ribs still rise with effort, but each breath feels more deliberate, less fragile. When he speaks her name, a quiet sound, more tone than word, her head shifts almost imperceptibly, lifting a few inches from the sand before settling back. It is the first movement she has made on her own since they found her. The vet, crouched nearby, prepares a shallow pan and slides it to the ranger. Inside, the water glints in the pale light, thin ripples spreading with each careful push. The ranger steadies it in the sand near her muzzle. At first, she only blinks at the surface, her nose twitching faintly at the scent. Then her tongue moves, slow and deliberate, breaking the reflection. The water disappears in small pulls, each swallow an act of quiet persistence. When she finishes, only a thin sheen remains in the pan, her whiskers beaded with droplets. They do not rush her. The ranger pulls the pan away and watches her settle again, her head lying more naturally against the sand now. In the stillness, he notices a small change, the faintest flick of her tail against the ground. Once, then again. It is not strong, but it is certain. The vet meets his eyes, and both share the briefest smile. It is the kind of sign they know better than to overread, yet one that carries more weight than words. The morning light grows, reaching through the branches overhead. Insects begin to stir, the hum of wings replacing the deep silence of night. The breeze is steady now, carrying with it the scent of dust and distant grass fires. It ruffles her fur, revealing the subtle shift in her posture, less collapsed, more curled in. Her eyes open wider, their amber catching flashes of gold in the sun. She blinks, slower than a healthy lion would, but with a focus that had been missing the day before. The ranger rises to check the drip, noting that the bag is nearly empty. Soon they will have to decide whether to replace it or let her rest without intervention. Every choice weighs the same question: how much more can her body take before help becomes harm? For now, the signs point forward. Her breaths are deeper, her swallowing strong enough to keep water down. If she can eat within the day, her chances will rise sharply. The vet cleans the wound on her shoulder again, this time with less caution, the dried edges loosening under the damp cloth. She tolerates it, flinching only once when the cloth brushes a tender spot. Her ears pivot toward the sound of the ranger's boots on the sand, tracking his movements in a way they hadn't before. Each small reaction tells its own truth, that her strength, however slight, is returning. As the sun clears the horizon, shadows shorten across the ground. The team keeps their movements calm and quiet, unwilling to break the rhythm of her recovery. The pan of water is refilled and set nearby, ready for when she wants it. For now, she rests again, tail twitching faintly in the dust. It is enough to keep them rooted here, watching, knowing that somewhere deep in her body, the fight to stand again has already begun. 3 days pass under the acacia's shade, each one marked by small but certain changes. The lioness drinks without hesitation now, finishing each pan of water before resting again. Her breaths have deepened, the sharp edges of exhaustion worn down into something steadier. But until this morning, she has not tried to rise. The ranger stands a few steps away, speaking softly as he checks the ground for obstacles. The vet has removed the IV line, trusting her to maintain her strength without it. She blinks at the sound of his voice, then shifts her forepaws beneath her. At first, it seems only a stretch, her claws pressing into the sand. Then her hindquarters tense, the muscles thin but firming. With a low, deliberate motion, she lifts her head higher and leans forward, weight transferring onto her front legs. Her first attempt falters. The ground seems to tilt under her, and her legs tremble, forcing her back down. She pauses, breathing through the effort, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. When she tries again, the movement is slower, more measured. Her front legs lock, shoulders rising, and this time she follows through, her hind legs unfolding until she stands, swaying, unsteady, but upright for the first time since the ranger found her on the road. The wind picks up, carrying the dry scent of grass and soil. It threads through her fur, lifting the dust from her coat in faint spirals. The ranger steps to her side, close enough to guide her if she falters but far enough to let her lead. She glances once toward the open space ahead, then places one paw forward. The step is small, yet it holds all the weight of the days she has spent on the edge of collapse. They walk together toward the low fence of the enclosure. The ground is uneven, the sand loose in places, and each step is deliberate. Her gait is awkward, her hind legs still weak, but her head remains level, her ears turning to catch distant sounds. The ranger matches her pace exactly, never urging her forward. Every few steps she pauses to steady herself. Nostrils flaring as she takes in the air beyond the shade. By the time they reach the edge, her breathing is faster, the rise and fall of her ribs sharp with effort. She stops, standing still as the wind moves through the grass beyond the fence. The ranger watches her tail sway, no longer the faint twitch of exhaustion but a slow, balanced motion. She leans forward slightly, as if testing the strength still in her legs. The vet waits a short distance away, nodding once as he sees her stance. It is not the fluid movement of a healthy lioness, not yet, but it is the mark of one who has chosen to stand again. The dust that clung to her fur now falls away in small, drifting trails, as though the ground itself is letting her go. When she finally turns back toward the acacia, the ranger follows her without speaking. She walks more slowly now, each step heavier with fatigue, but she does not stumble. By the time she settles back into the shade, the wind is stronger, carrying the scent of distant rain. Her body lowers with care, muscles folding without the collapse of weakness. The ranger rests on his heels nearby, knowing that each step she takes from here will be further from the dust that nearly claimed her. The morning of her release begins cool, the kind of still air that comes before the day turns hard with heat. The vet finishes his final checks under the acacia, running careful hands along her flank, pressing lightly at the wound on her shoulder. The skin is knitting well, the swelling gone. When he steps back, he gives the smallest nod to the ranger, a silent confirmation that she can return to the wild. The gate at the far side of the enclosure stands open, the space beyond stretching out into the plain. The grass there is taller now after a week of scattered rain, its seed heads brushing in the breeze. The ranger walks a few paces ahead, turning once to see if she follows. She does, her stride slow but sure, each step placed with the deliberation of an animal relearning the rhythm of its own body. They move together toward the gap in the fence. The wind brings scents she hasn't touched in days. The musk of other lions, the faint sharpness of antelope, the dusty sweetness of acacia blooms. Her ears shift forward, catching sounds carried from far across the plain. The closer they draw to the open space, the more her posture changes. Her head lifts, her shoulders roll more fluidly, the stiffness of recovery loosening into something closer to her natural gait. At the edge, she stops. The shadow of the fence falls across her paws, and beyond it the tall grass sways like a living wall. For a moment she stays still, her breath even, her eyes scanning the horizon. The ranger stands at her side, not touching, only waiting. She turns her head toward him, the movement unhurried. Their eyes meet for a few seconds. No sign of fear, no urgency, only a quiet acknowledgement. Then she steps forward. The fence line passes under her body, the grass closing around her legs. Her tail lifts high, a strong curve in the air, the kind of signal a lioness gives when moving with confidence. The muscles in her back shift under her coat, each stride carrying her further into the open. The ranger watches her shoulders rise and fall with the rhythm of health, no longer bound by the slow caution of the past days. She does not look back again. Within moments, the grass parts only where her passage bends it, then stands upright, hiding her from sight. The vet gathers the empty water pan and folded stretcher without a word. The ranger keeps his gaze on the place where she vanished, the wind carrying the grass in slow waves as if closing a door behind her. Out on the plain, she will face the same risks she always has: hunger, rivals, the strain of the dry months, but now she carries the strength to meet them. The enclosure stands silent once more, the open gate waiting for the wind to move it. The ranger turns back toward the shade of the acacia, the space beside him empty but lighter than it had been for days. The evening light is low, the sun sliding toward the horizon in long streaks of gold and shadow. The ranger drives slowly along the boundary road, the dust curling behind the truck in soft spirals. It has been a week since the lioness walked out through the open gate, and his patrol is as routine as any other, scanning fence lines, checking tracks, noting the movement of herds on the plain. The air is calm. The only sound is the quiet hum of the engine and the faint rustle of dry leaves in the wind. He rounds a bend where the road cuts close to a thicket of acacia and wild sage. Something shifts in the shadows. At first it's only the faint sway of branches, Then the outline forms. A shape he knows without doubt. She steps from the cover, her coat catching the last light, her frame fuller, stronger than when he last saw her. The wind presses the grass against her legs and her ears turn forward, fixed on him. The truck slows to a crawl. He does not call out, does not move toward her. Distance matters here. She is no longer under his care, and whatever brings her close again is hers to decide. She stands just beyond the edge of the road, the shadows of the brush pooling around her feet. For a long moment, neither moves. The air between them feels stretched, filled with a quiet that is not the absence of sound but the presence of something unspoken. Her gaze holds him steadily. The set of her head is relaxed, not tense, her body balanced on all four paws. Then, slowly, she blinks, a long, deliberate closing and opening of her eyes. It is not a submission, not a request, but an acknowledgement, the kind of gesture that belongs to her world, not his, but offered, all the same. The ranger keeps his hands still on the wheel. The engine idles low. He knows she could turn away at any moment and that she owes him nothing. She takes a single step forward, closing the distance by a pace, then stops. Her nose lifts slightly, the wind carrying the scents of dust, engine oil, and the familiar trace of human sweat. When she moves again, it is not toward him, but back into the brush. Her tail sways once, a smooth curve in the air before the leaves close behind her. The sound of her movement fades quickly, swallowed by the thicket. Only the shifting shadows remain, as if she had never stepped into view. The ranger waits a few seconds longer before easing the truck forward. The road unwinds ahead, the last of the light catching in the dust that drifts behind him. Somewhere beyond the trees, she walks her own path, strong enough now to choose the distance between them. The moment lingers, small but certain, like the slow blink she left with him before returning to the wild. The morning begins clear, the kind of pale light that makes every track in the dust stand out sharp and new. The ranger notices them first, a fresh line of paw prints circling the outer edge of the station. They are larger than any stray wanderers, spaced with the steady rhythm of a lion in good health. The impressions are deep, the edges clean, made in the cool hours before dawn. He follows them with slow steps, the marks weaving between tufts of grass before angling toward the open plain. The vet joins him at the boundary, both moving quietly now, reading the ground as much as the air. A second set of tracks appears alongside the first, smaller, lighter, the paws not yet heavy with muscle. Then another set, just as small, two young ones walking close to the larger prints. The ranger glances ahead, scanning the grass for movement, his pace steady. If she has brought them here, she has chosen the place carefully. They find her less than 200 meters from the station in a shallow hollow where the grass grows thick and waist-high. The morning sun catches on her coat, the gold deepened by shadow. She lies stretched on her side, her body relaxed but alert, head lifted as they approach. At her belly, two small cubs shift clumsily through the grass, their coats still carrying the faint spots of youth. One stumbles, nose pressed into her flank. The other blinks toward the men, ears twitching at their steps. The ranger stops well short of the hollow, knowing the line he cannot cross. She watches him without tension, her gaze steady, her breathing calm. The cubs do not disappear into the grass. She makes no move to shield them, no low warning in her throat. It is as if she has decided there is nothing here to guard against. The wind moves through the grass, bending the seed heads so they brush against her shoulders. The cubs press closer to her, one climbing briefly across her foreleg before tumbling back down. She glances at them once, then returns her eyes to the ranger. In that still moment, the meaning is plain. She is not here to seek help, but to show what she has kept alive. The vet stands quietly at his side, saying nothing. The air between them holds the soft rustle of grass and the faint chirr of insects in the heat. The ranger notes how the cubs' steps match the smaller tracks near the station. how their bodies are lean but uninjured. Whatever dangers she faced since her release, she has met them well enough to bring these two into the world and keep them safe. After a while, she rises. The cubs mimic her movement awkwardly, legs splayed, tails flicking. She steps past them into the taller grass, pausing only once to look back. The cubs follow, their heads just visible above the stems, until all three are swallowed by the sway of the plane. The ranger stays in place long after they vanish, the tracks at his feet already softening under the morning wind. What she has fought for will live out there now, beyond his reach, carried by the same wild strength that once nearly failed her. In the quiet, the image of her standing in the grass with the cubs lingers, as certain as the prints she left behind.